Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick preview and prediction for Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois. Of course, this fight goes down on the 26th of August, takes place in Poland, will be televised in the UK on TNT Sports pay-per-view, and in the US, I'm assuming ESPN, but I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. Oleksandr Usyk defending his IBF, WBA and WBO heavyweight titles. Daniel Dubois, the WBA mandatory challenger. Does he have a chance in this fight? I mean, listen, he punches hard, but really, aside from that, I don't really see him as having a realistic shot of pulling off the upset. But again, he can punch. It is the heavyweight division after all, so I guess anything's possible. But if we're talking about in the realms of possibility, I have to be brutally honest. I think this could be a long night for Daniel Dubois. But regardless, I am glad to see Usyk defending his heavyweight titles. He couldn't get the Tyson Fury fight, so he has to keep on fighting, in my opinion. Stay active, fight who he can, etc. And yeah, Dubois was the next in line, so it is what it is. Let's briefly break down the tale of the tape between these two fighters, and then I will start to talk about what I believe each guy should do to win, and eventually give my prediction. Oleksandr Usyk, the favourite and the champion, has a perfect record, 20 wins, 0 defeats, 13 of his 20 wins coming by way of knockout. Dubois has a record of 19 wins, 1 defeat, 18 of his 19 wins coming by way of knockout. Oleksandr Usyk is listed as 6'3", with a 78-inch reach, whereas Daniel Dubois is listed as 6'5", with a 78-inch reach. So both guys have the same reach, but Dubois, according to stats, is 2 inches taller. And, you know, I don't think that's all of that significance in this fight in regards to the height, because Dubois doesn't really use it like that anyway. He is the bigger man, though. He carries more weight. Usyk usually weighs in the low 220s, 220, 221, whereas Dubois weighs in the low 240s. So Dubois on fight night will more than likely have a 20-pound advantage, a 20-pound weight advantage. So yeah, that could be considered as an advantage in this bout. Oleksandr Usyk is a southpaw, whereas Daniel Dubois is an orthodox fighter. I think the southpaw element to this fight could be interesting. We saw Dubois in his last fight really struggle with the relatively unknown southpaw Kevin Lerena. Lerena really wasn't supposed to give Dubois any problems, but he did. So the southpaw aspect of this fight could be a big advantage to Oleksandr Usyk. In regards to ages, Oleksandr Usyk is 36 years old, whereas Daniel Dubois is 25 years old. So Dubois is a much younger man, 11 years younger than Oleksandr Usyk, so perhaps he's got less miles on the clock. I think that's fair to say. However, of course, Oleksandr Usyk has much more experience. They've actually had the same amount of pro fights, both have 20 fights, but in the pros, Usyk has fought so much better competition, it's not even funny. And of course, Usyk also has that vast amateur pedigree. So the experience obviously is with Usyk. But anyway, let's break down what I believe each guy should do to win this fight. And I think we shall start with Dubois because that's really where the intrigue comes. How's he going to approach this fight? To me, the answer is very simple. I believe Daniel Dubois in this fight has to be aggressive from Jump Street. I think he needs to get a good start in this fight, both by winning early rounds and also hurting Usyk, giving Usyk something to think about, making him feel that power, even if he doesn't necessarily show it. You have to put that doubt in Usyk's mind, you know, make him realise there's something to be afraid of in regards to Dubois' power. And again, I think he needs to start this fight very aggressively, boxing behind the jab, keeping that guard nice and tight, essentially pressure fighting in a high guard, fire that ramrod jab as he's coming forwards, double the jab up, and, try to walk Usyk down again from round one, set a high pace early on. Now, whether Dubois can do that, I know that's risky against Usyk, because Usyk keeps a high pace throughout the fight, and if that doesn't work early on, yeah, you could see a scenario where Dubois just badly gasses and gets stopped. I think that's a very real likelihood if Dubois adopts the game plan I'm suggesting, but I believe that is still his best chance, to put it on Usyk early on, to try and draw him into a fight early on, and actually do some damage early on. Because if he sits and boxes with Usyk, I believe he loses the rounds, I believe he gets picked off. And even in that sort of lower paced fight, let's say Dubois tries to box with Usyk, again, I believe he gets outboxed and picked off, but after a while I could see Usyk starting to hurt Daniel Dubois. I mean, this is a guy who was hurt by Kevin Lerena, once again a cruiserweight coming up, and Lerena is not as imposing as Dubois, as Usyk, and I don't think he punches as hard as Usyk either, but he was able to hurt Dubois quite regularly in that short fight. And again, if Dubois starts to box with Usyk, I think you'll start to see that happen after a while, where Usyk gets in his rhythm, he starts to catch Dubois with shots he can't really see coming, and I think you'll start to see Dubois get hurt. I think it's imperative that Dubois takes the initiative in this fight from round one, is extra aggressive early on, behind a high guard, behind that hard jab, double up the jab, hook off the jab, try to go downstairs, work the body. Every time you have Usyk on the ropes, throw. Even if you can't land, clean. If you can't land clean, you're still landing on him, on the shoulders, on the gloves, on the forearms, on the hips, etc. You have to slow Usyk down. You have to put a bit of damage on his body. Try to bruise him up, try to burst some blood vessels, make it a rough fight. That's what Marciano used to do. And by the way, I'm not saying Dubois Marciano, but listen, man, I think he needs to adopt that sort of game plan. Look at what Chisora did in the first 3 rounds of the Usyk fight. Now, I think Chisora's success gets really overrated against Usyk, but he did do well in the first 3 rounds. He just didn't sustain it. He got completely outboxed after that. But in those first 3 rounds, that's the sort of pace I want from Dubois. And unlike Chisora, one thing Dubois does better than Chisora, he does have better punch technique all round. He can hook to the body, hook to the head, uppercuts through the middle. He can throw that chopping overhand right. He's got a good technique on his jab. He's got better punch technique than Chisora. So he needs to combine what Chisora did in regards to applying that relentless pressure, trying to make Usyk uncomfortable, but at the same time, utilising his punch technique and really throwing shots. Again, doubling up the jab, throwing combinations, trying to work the body, etc. And yeah, try to draw Usyk into some sort of fight and try to get his respect early on and try to win some early rounds. Again, I think the bodywork's going to be paramount for Dubois if he's to stand any chance in winning this fight. Usyk, to me, has the best legs in the heavyweight division. I think he's got the best gas tank. Because, his work rate is ridiculous. Not just in regards to throwing punches, but how he moves. And we're not just talking about his feet, we're talking about his whole body, the feints, the changes in level, etc. Needs to try and drain that gas tank, I would say. He needs to try and drain that gas tank of Usyk. He needs to make it rough and ugly. But also, try to mix things up. Don't make your patterns too predictable. That's one thing Dubois is guilty of, in my opinion. He does throw nice combinations at times, but I feel they are too similar all the time. It's usually the jab, right hand, left hook, etc. I want to see Dubois mix things up on the front foot, fighting out of that high guard. A shot that Joshua landed a couple of times in their fights, in his fights with Usyk, was the lead right hand, without throwing a jab. So maybe if Dubois could get that jab going, even if it's not landing on a frequent occasion, get the jab going, put it in Usyk's head that shot's being thrown a lot, then maybe utilise that as a bait for the lead right hand. Feint the jab, lead with the right hand. Give Usyk different looks. Give him different things to think about. Feint, hook off the jab, etc. Dubois offensively is basic, but he does the basics quite well. But he's going to need more than basics in this fight. He's going to need more elaborate setups. So, utilize the usual patterns that he does do. Try to rinse it, try to throw a lot of punches, but mix things up. Again, give Usyk different looks. Try to catch him with a shot he can't see coming. He needs to get creative, as well as having output, as well as having front foot momentum, as well as making it rough. And to me, it's not really rocket science for Dubois, unless just landing one perfect shot. But for me, he needs to be aggressive. For me, he needs to take risks early on and try to put up a good fight. Because really, Dubois here, listen, I know there's a lot of people expecting him to get completely smoked. But listen, man, he's almost in a no-lose situation. If he does what I say he does, and he has a bit of success, gives Usyk a harder fight than people imagine, it's actually probably going to raise his stock, to be honest. So yeah, I just want to see Dubois go in there and try to make it a fight. Don't overthink it. I know that's very easy to do against a guy like Usyk, but I think that's a lot of fighters' downfall when they fight Usyk, including Joshua. They tend to overthink it. Try to utilise what you have, which is size and power. That's what he has over Usyk. Utilise it. Boxing sometimes is complicated by hipsters, but it's simple, right? It's simple. Utilise what you have. And on a tangent, I feel this is becoming very frequent in sports. I see this in football a lot as well. Football's a very simple game, but now it's just overcomplicated by, these tacticos on Twitter. Boxing's become the same. Listen, Dubois is bigger, he's heavier, he hits harder, he's younger. Try to use that in your advantage. Be aggressive, make it a fight, try to crowd Usyk, etc. See where it goes from there. As for Oleksandr Usyk, to me he just needs to be Usyk, and I know that's not much of an answer, but the openings will be there against Daniel Dubois. Lead foot positioning of Usyk is going to be key. Obviously being the southpaw, he gets his right foot on the outside of his opponents very frequently. We saw Dubois struggle with that against Lerena. Lerena had good foot positioning on Dubois throughout that fight, and quite frankly, that's why I was so upset with that fight, because we saw how Lerena started. He dropped Dubois, 2 or 3 times in round 1, but after that, he just wouldn't throw the shot, the straight left hand, and it was there all night for him. He had the lead foot positioning, but he stopped throwing punches after round 1. The lead straight left hand was there for Lerena all night long, and listen, unless Dubois makes serious adjustments, it's going to be there for Usyk as well. In fact, much like I said with Dubois, I think Usyk would be wise starting quickly in this fight. Dubois lost to Joe Joyce, a fight in which he started quite badly in, if I remember. He started badly against Lerena, got dropped 2 or 3 times. Maybe this guy's still questioning his chin, his heart, etc. So why not try to test that early on? Make Dubois realise that you can land whenever you want. You can get lead foot positioning, you can dictate lead hand control, and you can split the guard with the southpaw straight left hand. Put that doubt in Dubois' mind, and bear in mind, Dubois has the reputation of being a bit of a flat track bully, a bit of a softie. We saw how he ended the Joe Joyce fight, ended up on his knee and got counted out. There's been question marks over his confidence, things of that nature. The ending to the Lerena fight was extremely strange, and he had a lot of trouble in that fight. So, listen, man, I'm sure Dubois, in the back of his mind, has a lot of doubts, has confidence issues. If I'm Usyk, I try to test that early on. Have a good quick start, a nice active first round. Pepper the jab, step around Dubois, make him reset. Fire the straight left hand on the turn. try to discombobulate Dubois early on, land shots early on, and make him realise he's in there with a different level, a level in which he's not seen before. How does Dubois react to that if that does happen? On the sample size I have, I think he may react pretty poorly and may unravel real quickly. I don't trust Dubois' emotional maturity. I see him as a type of guy who, when things start to go wrong, he unravels. We saw that in the Joe Joyce fight. We saw that in the Lorena fight until that fight ended the way it did. And as well as that, I'm not convinced he's got the highest in-ring IQ. I'm not convinced by his heart, quite frankly. I'm not convinced by his confidence. So again, that's why I'm suggesting Usyk should really try to put it on Dubois early on. That may sound risky, considering Dubois is a big puncher and all. But listen, man, it's the heavyweight division. Usyk's skill set is levels above Daniel Dubois, so why not try to take a few liberties early on? Test that heart, test that will, test that mettle. But ultimately, I think there's more than one way Usyk can win this fight. I think he can win this by purely boxing, flicking out that southpaw jab, changing the levels with a straight left hand, up, down, body, head, etc. I could see him winning this fight playing safe. To be honest, I think he'll outbox Dubois, but I could also see him winning this fight, being more front foot heavy after a few rounds, getting that lead foot control and really starting to fire that jab and to fire that straight left hand with purchase. Not only that, I could see a scenario where Usyk's right hook comes into play. It's a good shot of his, but we've not seen it as much in the heavyweight division. But providing he's winning the early rounds and Dubois reacts the way I expect him to, I think you'll start to see Dubois reach, particularly with his lead hand, his jab. He'll start falling in, which he does do sometimes as the fight goes on, falling in with a jab. And then I think that leaves Usyk openings to counter with that southpaw right hook, the lead right hook, so to speak. And yeah, I think it's one of those fights where it depends on how Usyk wants to cook the meal. Does he want to do it slowly? Does he want to put it in a crock pot? Or does he want to slice, dice and try and get it done early? That's really what it comes down to here, in my opinion, is how Usyk approaches this fight. I think he can approach it either way. Maybe a bit more aggressive than we're expecting, or maybe safety first, box, and then start to turn the screw in the second half. I personally think he'll do the latter. I think he'll probably be a bit cautious early on, been out of the ring for quite some time. He's in there with a big puncher. I think he'll probably box early on, and then again turn the screw as the fight transpires. But listen, my prediction for this fight is Oleksandr Usyk. I'm quite confident in that pick. To me, it's really about how, to be honest. I'm actually going to go Usyk late stoppage here. Stoppage in the last 3 rounds, 10, 11 or 12, based on accumulation. I could even see a scenario where Dubois' trainer, Don Charles, throws in the towel. I could see that scenario happening. One of those ones. If Dubois makes the distance, I think he's done well, to be honest. If he makes it a competitive fight, he's done very well. If he wins this fight, god damn, that's upset of the year to me. But yeah, listen, I'm looking forward to seeing Usyk back in the ring. It's been too long. But I'm also looking forward to seeing where Dubois is at right now, because, most people at this point in time are really writing him off. Can he surprise us? Can he add elements to his game that we've not seen before? And even if he loses, it could give people faith that maybe this guy can do something going forwards. We'll see. But yeah, my final prediction is Usyk late, last 3 rounds, 10, 11 or 12, TKO, KO or corner pullout, one of those methods. But yeah, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Del Boy, peace.